He had a big problem. His skin was disgusting and itchy. He had blotches. This man was a national hero. He was a accomplished general, an important man. But he had a skin condition that there was no cure for it. There was no surgery he could get. There was no medicine he could take to make it better. He was stuck for life. Miserable. But he found ways, he had strategies to make his life work, to get by. This man would lead raids into neighboring countries and plunder them, take their stuff, get the best of their people. And one of the girls that he had captured came to this man's wife, and she said, I wish that he could go to my country because we don't have medicine and we don't have doctors, but there's a way that he could be made better. There's a man of God there who can do miracles. We have a God. This man was obviously desperate because the powerful man who had been raiding this country suddenly had a heart change. He, instead of going to take their stuff, he took them stuff. He said, okay, we are going to try this out. He called in the chariots. He called in his servants, and they piled the stuff on. They got the gifts, and they started off to try to find a way to make his life better. Well, they got to the other country, but he didn't follow directions very well because she had said there's a man of God, but he went to the king. When he got to the king didn't have a cure, and the king was scared to death. He was so scared, he ripped his clothes. He said, what am I going to do? You've just come here to pick a fight with us. Now we're going to be in trouble because I can't do anything for you. But the man of God that this girl had been talking about, his name was Elisha. And he sent word to the king. He said, hey, don't worry about it. Send them out here to me. So they left the palace, they left the great city, and they went clip-clopping out into the country to this man's little house. And they got there, and he was so excited. He was like, finally, I'm going to get the relief I've been craving. They got to this man's house, and he was just so excited. He greeted Elisha, the man of God, warmly. And he said, here's my problem. What can I do? And Elisha said, go down there and jump in the river, duck under the water 7 times, and your skin is going to be as good as new. Now, this man was furious. He said, I've come all this way. I'm a great man, and you're telling me to do something as silly as go and dip in the water and think that that is going to change me. And then Elisha said, that's all I have. You can do what you want. And the man was angry. And he was set to load up his gifts and hightail it back to his country. But this man, I love his servant. He was a great guy. He said, not in these words, but basically, he said, man, you're crazy. We've come all this way. There's no other hope for you. Why not just try it? He said, if Elisha would have told you to do something big, something hard, something great, you would have done that. Why not just try it? It's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to cost anything. Just get in the water. We won't even look. We won't tell anyone, you know? So down to the river they go. I can just about imagine he, in all his royalty, goes wading out into the water, dips under, nothing. Dips under, nothing. And he is just so embarrassed in front of all his servants. After 7 times, he comes up and his skin is clean as a baby's skin. Imagine that. His life was changed. The impossible had happened for him. In the book of Matthew, we see Jesus preaching the good news of the gospel. In the first chapters of Matthew, between chapters 5 and 11, Jesus did miracle after miracle after miracle. In public, everyone saw him casting out demons, healing the sick, changing people's lives, and Jesus was preaching the gospel. And a lot of people were standing there with their arms folded, looking on. They didn't want to have anything to do with this kind of a gospel. Why? Why was Elisha's news so hard for the general? It insulted his pride, his personal dignity. He didn't want to do something as foolish as getting down into that water. That just made no sense. It insulted his national pride. He said, we have rivers in my country that are just as good as this one. Why should I get in this foreign water? So the good news insulted, Naaman was the name of this man. It insulted his pride. It insulted his intellect. He probably tried 15 times to imagine what was in this water. Is there some kind of mineral in here that cleanses leprosy? Is there some kind of potion here? And it just made no sense to his mind. He tried to figure it out. Why did it have to be this river? Why him? Why 7 times? And at the core, this good news, the news of a cure, went against his strategy for making his life work out. As badly as he wanted to get his life better, to get rid of this skin disease, he wanted to work his own life out. And we people have a big problem. We want to find some way to make our life better. And we have another big problem. We don't mind using Jesus to do that. We can pull him in and mix him in and make him part of our strategy, but at the core, it's still me trying to find another strategy to make my life, my plan work out for my glory. Imagine, back to Matthew, Jesus doing these amazing miracles, doing these amazing healings, and people rejecting that. Brothers and sisters, if you're here and you're sharing the gospel and you're preaching Jesus and people are rejecting you, don't get discouraged. It's not your problem. It's a problem with them. And friend, let me tell you, if you are here this morning, I don't care what you look like on the outside, but if in your heart you are rejecting the gospel, it's not a problem with the message. It's a problem with your heart. And if you're here this morning and you think that at the core, most people are basically genuinely good, we do a lot of nice things. If we could just get to know our hearts, let me tell you what we're good at. We're good at finding strategies to make ourselves look good, to make our life work out. But we are deceitful and desperately wicked in our hearts, and we need a cure. Open your Bibles with me to Matthew chapter 11. Jesus was feeling kind of the weight of this. John the Baptist had been a great prophet talking about Jesus and proclaiming the coming kingdom. The king was upset, personally offended, had John the Baptist locked up, and John sent some of his followers to Jesus to say, are you the one? In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus responded to that question. He said, go and touch on the things you see. The blind see and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed and the deaf hear. The dead are raised and the poor have the gospel preached to them. This is the kind of thing that Jesus was doing in public. Everyone was seeing it. And a lot of people were rejecting the message. And Jesus was just feeling this. He said, this generation is like children playing in the marketplace and calling out to their friends, saying, we played the flute for you and you didn't dance. We told you the best news and you didn't respond. We mourned to you and you did not lament. We told you the bad news and you did not respond. We gave you the good, we gave you the bad, and you stood back, arms folded, looking on skeptically, not wanting to have anything to do with it. Jesus is just saying, seems his heart, what he was feeling. But then Jesus again shares the gospel. Jesus had a way of saying big things in little sentences. Verse 29, Jesus was praying to his Father, and then he addresses the people around him. let's start in verse 28. Matthew 11:28. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Let me tell you, the gospel is beautiful and satisfying and glorious, and a lot of people reject the gospel because self-glory and self-will and self-reliance will never make it past the gospel-induced death to self and into authentic life in Jesus Christ. And we all want to go to heaven when we die, and we all want to experience rest in our hearts, but we want to have our own way desperately badly. Jesus gave us an invitation. He said, "Come to me." Jesus said things like, "I am the way." He didn't just say, I'll show you the way. Jesus said, "Me, it's me, I'm the way." He said, "I am the truth." He didn't just tell the truth. Oh, Jesus told the truth, but he didn't just tell it. He said, "I am the truth." Jesus said, "I am the life." And here, Jesus says, "Come to me." Don't just come to a philosophy. Don't just try to reason it out. Come to the person of Jesus. That is Jesus' invitation to us. Oh, but we try. We would love that rest, but we try other ways. We try to find rest by becoming the best version of ourselves. If I could just, get my life a little better, if I could just, be a little more educated or a little more kind or a little whatever. We try to find rest. Our generation, not just the Christians, everyone in our generation wants to make an impact. We want to make a difference. So we try to find rest, a sense of deep peace inside by making a difference in someone else's life. And I'm telling you, that can be a powerful motivator for people to do things that look spiritual, that are just a strategy for them to find rest on their own terms. We can try to find rest instead of coming to Jesus. We try relaxing. We watch a good movie. We play a game. And let me tell you, with most of these things, there's nothing wrong with that. But if this is the way that you are trying to find rest, it is going to fail you every single time. We try working. We accomplish. We are productive, man. We try managing. We manage our time. Oh, you tell me a time management technique. I've tried it, and I've tried it to find rest in my heart. The Pomodoro technique, the time blocking technique. I mean, bring it on. Let me tell you, that doesn't produce a life of rest. We manage everything. We find a good app. Oh, my wife can tell you how many apps I've downloaded thinking this is going to change my life. It doesn't give you rest in your heart. So we manage anything that we can. We try feeling sorry enough for our sin. How about that? We try praying enough to find rest. Sorrow over sin and prayer are powerful things, but only to the extent that they lead us to Jesus. You can wear your knees out. You can pray 24/7 and not find rest. You can cry till there's no more tears in you over the bad things you've done. But if it doesn't lead you to the person of Jesus Christ, it will not lead you to rest. And we can be so spiritual about it all. So let me say again, we will only find rest when we come to Jesus. So why is it so attractive? Why do we try all these things instead of just coming to him? Well, we try it because it's a way to preserve ourselves, to keep my plans, to keep my desires. So to come to Jesus means that we give up our rights to control. As long as I'm finding rest through my methods, even if Jesus is in there somewhere, as long as it's still me trying, I can still call the shots. I'll tell you a story. About 3 years ago, 3.5 maybe, I was living here in the city, and I was getting ready to move to Canada, and I was nervous. I had surrendered a lot. I had made a lot of deals with Jesus, but there was still a lot of me. there still is today places where I don't see it. But there were a lot of my own strategies in there. And I'll tell you, I really wanted to get married. And at the time, I thought the biggest thing holding me back from getting married is finances. If I could just find a way to make finances work out, then I could, find a wife. It'd be easy. So let me tell you, I had a strategy. I got on Facebook Marketplace and I found a big yellow bus that had been turned into a camper. And it had a wood stove because in Canada it gets cold in the winter. So this bus had a wood stove and it had bunk beds. I mean, it was very rustic. But Janelle was just praising the Lord. This strategy didn't work out. But this was my hope for how I could make life work. Yeah, and I was surrendered. On the outside, it looked like I was just I probably didn't look like I was so spiritual actually, but I thought I was. And I was gonna go serve God, but I still wanted to do it on my own terms. And so I saw the language school we were going to. They had a little policy that you weren't allowed to park an RV on their lot and live in it. So I called the director of the language school and I pled with him and I argued with him and I said, you need to understand this would work. And he said, no. I got off the phone and I was just devastated. What was it? It was just one idea, right? But that yellow bus on Facebook Marketplace summed up my strategy for how I could find rest, for how I could find a good life. And for you, it's probably not that, but it can be anything that we try. We can live a very spiritual looking life and be just half dead, just partially given over to Jesus. And that's no way to find rest. It's going to be a constant tug of war between me and the Lord. To experience rest means that we sign ourselves away. We give all responsibility for the good life over to Jesus Christ, and in this way, we die. We let him have all that we possess and all that we dream of. We quit trying to make a deal with God. There are so many Christians, genuine Christians, who are just trying to make a deal with God. Oh, okay, I'll do this. But we keep a list, close to our heart, in our pocket somewhere, of the sacrifices we made, of the surrenders we've made. Stop it. Just give it all to him. And if you're still bargaining with Jesus, if you're still trying to make a deal with him, you won't find rest. Jesus said, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow. Come to Jesus. Coming to Jesus means that we value things that can't be seen with our eyes. Let's go to Luke 16. Luke chapter 16, starting in verse 19. And my goal with this is not to just go into the depths of this story, but to just see some very surface level things about this. This is the kind of thing that Jesus did all through his life, all the parables he told, all the stories he told, all the ways that he related. He was saying there are invisible realities that are more real than the tangible, that should shape your life and change your life more than things that you can see and feel and process with your mind. Luke 16, verse 19. There was a certain rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. That means he had a great life. He was rich. But there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And we can stop right there. And everyone in the world says, I would give anything in this story to be the rich man. Lazarus, that would be a terrible life. And so they make their decisions based on that desire to be that rich man and to not be Lazarus. But Jesus goes on with this story. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. Do you see? There's more to this life than the immediate, than the here and now. The rich man also died and was buried. It happens to everyone. And being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, verse 25, Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted and you are tormented. So the world lives for what we can have now, for what feels good, what feels great to them. The one who would come to Jesus says, I would give anything to be that beggar. I would give anything to be in the place. Not that there's spirituality in being poor, but we would give anything to be in that place that is ruled by the invisible things, but that says we have a place in heaven. You see, it's not just some pie in the sky philosophy. This is a tangible thing. We make our decisions, what job we take, where we move, what we do with our life, what we pursue is ruled by a faith in what Jesus said, that there's more than just the immediate, there's more than just what you can see and feel right now. Okay? So to come to Jesus means that we value those invisible realities. And we find rest when we agree with Jesus. Let me tell you, we can be poor as church mice. That's kind of a funny expression, but we can be very poor and be at rest in our heart, in the place where it matters most. Have deep rest because we agree with Jesus that our reward is not in this life, that there is more than what we can see. Okay? That really produces a rest. So going back to Matthew 11, Jesus said, come to me. Our walk with Jesus needs to be one straight to him, not to the things connected to him, not just to those. His next phrase, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, In other words, everyone who realizes that they are too weak to make life work out. How has your strategy been working out for you? Has it produced the rest in your soul that you've been longing for? This invitation is for the people who recognize their need. And everything in our nature wars against that. We want to find a way by ourselves to make this life work. You can see it as in little children. I'll do this myself. And that desire, that drive, I'm going to do this, stays with us into our adult life. So I want to ask you, how do you view God? How are you approaching him? How do you come to first date? What kind of person are you on your first date? You're pretty, you're interesting, you're humble, of course. How do you bring the best that you have to offer? How are you when you go to a job interview? Well, you're intelligent, you're punctual, you're competent. We put our best foot forward. But when we come to Jesus, his invitation is for us to come to him weak and heavy laden. People who don't have their life figured out. Jesus, he can see right through us. Oh, you might make a good impression with your employer. You might make a good impression with your first date. But Jesus, he sees right through you. Don't even try the shenanigans with him. And he loves you. You know what? If most people could see right through me, right into my heart, even right now, there would be something in there that would make you want to detest me. Jesus sees right through us, and he doesn't detest us. He is filled with love. He is saying, come to me. Not you who have your life figured out, but come to me, all you who don't have it figured out. His posture is one of welcoming those who come to him broken. His posture is one of meekness and lowliness. And I want to say this. in John 14, Jesus said, whoever has seen me has seen the Father, okay? We can see this humanity, this love in Jesus, and that's the same way that God is. And I want to quote, Michael Reeves said something, so here's his quote. As you see Jesus' compassion as he groans over the sorry state of the leper or the widowed mother, as you see him befriending and forgiving tax collectors and sinners, that is the glory of God. That is the very heart of God displayed. There is no other God secretly in heaven who is unloving and ungracious. We see Jesus, we see his love. That's who God is. That's the one who wants us, who wants a relationship with you. So our problem is not how much we need Jesus. Our problem is that we think we can come so close to making our life work out without him. There's something in us that wants to say, I'm fine, I can get this. Maybe just a little help, Jesus. I'll have an illustration for this. A couple weeks ago, I was changing the spark plugs in our car, and the spark plugs, it's like a little bolt, and there's holes in your engine. And so on our car, there's 4 of them. And so you have to get that bolt out of that hole, right? And Janelle was down helping me, and I got 2 out quite well, and the third one I was having a problem with. I got that bolt loose, but I couldn't get it out. I didn't have the right kind of tools. If Austin would have been there, man, he could have got it, no problem. But I was trying, and I started to get scared. I was like, man, we need to go somewhere this evening, and I can get this out. So, like the good spiritual leader that I am, I calmly prayed, Lord, just help us out a little here. And I kept trying. A few minutes later, Janelle pipes up, and she sounded desperate. And she was like, Lord, please help us. And I was like, there was something in me that just wanted to say, Janelle, calm down. Like, don't be so desperate. We're going to get this. Well, finally, she kept saying, you want me to? I was like, no. Do you want me to? No. Finally, I said, Janelle, why don't you try? She got it out like in 10 seconds, But there's something in us when we come to Jesus, even when we come to him in prayer, we want to ask him for something, but we don't want to be too desperate. Stop it. Bring your desperation, bring your weariness, bring your inability to make it work. Come to Jesus. So Jesus is inviting the people who don't have the spiritual resources to make life work. And in this context, the Sermon on the Mount makes so much sense. Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, the poor in heart. They are blessed because they are the ones who realize that they have insufficient resources to make life work for themselves. That is the first step to experiencing the gospel, to recognize with brutal honesty, I can't do it. Whatever I've been trying isn't going to work, ever. And we can spend years, I'm so close, I'm almost there. Come to Jesus, poor in heart. Those who mourn over this fact are blessed, because it's not in our natural happiness that we are free, but when we despair of our own efforts and come to Jesus with the honesty of an overwhelming need. We could go on through, but this is the beginning. When we come to Jesus this way, there's things that we would rather do instead of bring our need to Jesus. So it's one thing to acknowledge the need, and then we can try. So I just want to kind of go back. We're really good at digging wells. Through the prophet Jeremiah, God told his people, you've committed 2 evils. You've forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn cisterns. You've dug wells, but they're broken, and they can't hold water. So we can see our need. We feel our thirst for this rest, but we try some things. Mental gymnastics, and sometimes it's even subconscious. One thing that we can do, we can blame. We can say, I'm feeling this way, but it's because of my circumstances, or it's my environment, or it's someone in my life. And if I can just get that figured out, if I can just get to a better place, then I'm going to be able to do this. And in that, our salvation is that we believe that one day we will find ourselves in a better situation where we can, by our own resources, work our way to a good life. Another thing we can do, we can work. We recognize this weakness, this need, but we think we're so close. There's something inherent, just natural to us, that grabs for a cure. This is the self-help category is booming, and it's because it's a way to try to make life work for yourself. And some of them come dangerously close, we think. So we manage our time, our stress. We do everything we can to make ourselves a little better. And in this, our salvation is that we can manage or work our way to the good life if we just find the right way, the right system, the right habit. With our weakness, with our sorrow, with our heavy laden hearts, we can medicate. We can find other ways to cope. We can use substances, food, not even overeating, but just good tasting food can be just enough to distract us. Or drugs. I remember talking to a man on the street a couple years ago who was smoking marijuana. And I asked him why he does that. He said, everybody has to find a way to deal with their pain. And that young man was more honest than 100 Mennonite people in Lancaster County. We're trying some way to find a way to get through. Stop it. You don't have to do that. We can try it by working. We can try it by exercise. And again, not that those things are wrong. We need food. Work is good. Exercise is good. But if that's our way of finding rest, it's going to fail. And it's not going to lead you to Jesus. And in this, our salvation is that we can find ways to numb or stop the feeling, and we can get a good life by just ignoring the brokenness, covering it over. And that's a dangerous place. So coming back, why do we find this resistance? Why is it so hard? It's because of our pride. To come to Jesus means that we are acknowledging that we can't do it. Okay? And there's a huge difference between wanting Jesus a little bit to help me do it versus saying, I can't. Jesus, only you, all of you. And we can't bring ourselves in the door if we're still working by pride, trying to get the good life. Another thing is control. If we come to Jesus this way, weak, honest, and accepting him for all that he is, that means we are giving up control of our lives. And that's a very scary thing for us to do. Or for fear. We're afraid that if we come to Jesus this way, it's not going to be satisfying, that it's not going to lead to the deep life. And so we keep trying, doing the things that have kind of worked, living broken. And at the core, it's because we don't want to die. We want to preserve ourselves, our goals, our dreams, our glory. Stop it. Going back to that thought, Jesus says, come all you who labor and are heavy laden. Again, I'd like to quote Michael Reeves. He says, don't you find that so easily your view of God starts becoming less than biblical? You think that God is less loving, less gracious than he actually is. And here's a litmus test for this tendency. Have you ever felt, surely God will love me once I sort myself out? That is a non-Trinitarian understanding of God, a graceless God like those of the world religions. In fact, I'm going to dare to say that this statement is a satanic inversion of the gospel. I'll come to Jesus if I can just come to him a little better with something to offer. That is not the gospel. Come to him weak, heavy laden, weary. Just come to Jesus. So Jesus said, come to me. It's a coming to him, to his person. He said, all you who recognize that you can't do it, that you never will be able to do it. And then he gives the promise that he will give us rest. Jesus gives us rest in the deepest, most real way. See, our problem is not just that we can't have all that we want, but that we have a lot of stuff that we don't want to. We have this massive problem called sin, and the wages of sin is death, and we carry a load of condemnation. Condemnation, that's a damnatory sentence. Caleb, Otto, you are guilty. That's on every single one of us. And it's a load that we can never carry. It's a problem that we can never take care of. Jesus says, I will give you rest from that. Through the life of Jesus, through his work on the cross, through the blood that was poured out, Jesus lifted our sins up, and the wrath of God came down on Jesus. And because of this, our sin can be taken care of. And so often we stand back, like Naaman by the Jordan River. We say, I don't think I want to do that. Friend, there is no other way. There is no other cure to find life. In closing, this is the last passage. Let's turn to Romans chapter 8. This is why Jesus gives us rest. Romans 8, verse 1. There is therefore now no condemnation, no accusing sentence to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh. What is the flesh? It's that old desire to make things work my way. To those who aren't walking like that, but who have accepted Jesus as their only hope, their only sacrifice. Jesus gives us rest by taking out all condemnation. Going down to the last few verses in the chapter. Let's go to verse 28. So we come to Jesus, and it says, we know that all things work together for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For whom he foreknew, he predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. So those who come to Jesus, God makes like Jesus. He changes us from the inside out. He gives us a place to belong with Jesus. And then verse 31. What shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is he who condemns? It is Christ who died, and furthermore is also risen, who is even at the right hand of God, who makes intercession for us. Verse 35, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? We come to Jesus, he removes our condemnation, he takes that all away, and he pours in the pure, full love of his Son. He says, shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, not having enough to eat, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? When we come to Jesus, it's not a guarantee that we're going to escape all physical suffering and have a good physical life. But it is an offer to experience condemnation gone, his love with us in these situations. Verse 37, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am persuaded, listen to this, I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. That's what he offers us. Jesus offers us the removal of condemnation. He offers us his love. And this is rest. This is life Come to Jesus. I'll just pray a short prayer and then turn it over to Austin to do this. He does best. Lord, I pray that you would break down every resistance, every tendency that we have to make life work for each of us, Lord, that we would come to you. You're so beautiful. You're so satisfying. You are our desire. Amen.